the sprint that will lead up to release 12.0.1 of DevOps Model RealTime. And as usual in these sprint demos, I'll start with a brief summary of what we did in this sprint, and then followed by some demos and hopefully some discussions. So first, we have worked on a couple of samples that focus on how code generated by Model RealTime can integrate with other tools and technologies. So first sample is called Qt Traffic Light, and it shows how we can integrate with the user interface written in Qt. And there is another sample called lib gRPC server, which shows how you can create a gRPC server in your RealTime application so that other applications can communicate with it. Then we have also worked on improving the TC editor so that now when you save changes in the TC editor, it can automatically sort the TC properties alphabetically. This makes it easier to read the TC file if you're looking for a certain property, and most importantly, helps if you are developing in parallel. Many people are changing in the TC. That reduces the risk of conflicts. We also worked on improving the model debugger, and in this sprint we focused on reducing the number of nodes we show while debugging, and we did that by reducing the nodes for non-replicated ports. So if they have single multiplicity, now the debug view is more compact than before. And there was also a problem on some compilers that if the order in which you initialize members are different from the order in which they are declared, some compilers, I think typically GCC, can give a warning, and that is annoying. So now we have changed code generation so that it sorts the initializers to be in the same order as the members are declared in the class, and that avoids that warning. We also have spent some time making it possible to build generated code and the TargetRTS without using the RT-Perl that we ship with the product. We know that some of you may run on platforms which we don't provide an RT-Perl, and also in general would like to use another Perl distribution, and that is now possible. So there are some changes in the generated make files that make it work with the standard Perl installation. And also we have made it possible to configure the location of RT-Perl using a string substitution preference. We also worked on improving the support for JSON in the TargetRTS. So already before we had support for encoding data and messages into JSON. That was improved in this sprint. So for example, pointers could not be properly encoded before, but now we can do that. And we also implemented a JSON decoder, which does the opposite. So it takes a string produced by the JSON encoder and creates the corresponding object in memory. And this means that now you can, if you like, replace the standard ASCII encoded code functionality with JSON, if you like. There is also a utility for parsing JSON for other purposes than decoding. So if you invoke some API that give you JSON, you can now parse it and traverse the parsed structure to understand it better. Then we also worked on improving how we document and manage changes in the TargetRTS. So you may know that up until now we have relied on documentation for tracking changes, but starting from this sprint, we are now shipping so-called patch files with the product, and those patch files describe in a formal way exactly what changes have happened, and it also makes it possible to apply those changes automatically to uplift to a new version of the TargetRTS. During this sprint, actually quite late in the sprint, there was a security vulnerability reported on a library that we depend on, or actually it's the TCP server library that depends on that library. That library is called POCO. So those of you who use the TCP server library are impacted by this, and we are working on two-term solutions. For the short term, we're trying to uplift to a patched version of POCO that is available. But for the longer term, we aim at providing an alternative implementation that does not rely on POCO, so that you can avoid that dependency if you like to. So we'll probably come out with an newsletter about this when it's ready. In last sprint, you may remember that the eGit integration was experimental due to an issue related to failing merges. That has now been resolved, so it means that the eGit integration in 12.0.1 is no longer experimental and works well with Eclipse 2023.06. And usually we don't advertise bug fixes, but there is an important bug fix in this release that I think probably some of you have encountered. It has not been easy to determine exactly when it happens, but it has happened that this run active transformation dialog that can pop up when you edit code snippet could enter into a loop that was impossible to get out. So this problem should now have been fixed. Looking at the deliveries, 12.0.1 is for Eclipse 2023.06, and the older versions for 11.3 and older, for them you see the recommended latest versions here on this slide. And note that 11.0, 11.1 and 11.2 will go out to support later this year. So if you're still on those old versions, it can be a good idea to explore uplifting, for example, to 12.0.1. And the experimental features in this release is only the textual support for state machines. And I can also mention that we are working here on replacing this feature with use of code RealTime, which already provides a textual syntax for state machines and other things. And our goal is that it should be possible to work with such files also in Model RealTime. That's something we are working on.